I told my mom that I don't believe in God today. Like, I got into some of my friends' faces on the very show, on this show. He wanted me to erase all of the shows that we'd been doing for so long because he was freaking out that he was going to get figured out. The evangelicals thought the Catholics were a cult.
You would need a majority conservative justices. That's not going to happen. We would never be able to do that.
People on both sides of the aisle that suck.
Say what we say when we say it. Say it again, then you can go home to your toys.
I have decided to bring back Irreverent, and bringing back Irreverent is something that I've been wanting to do for a while, but the climate, the political climate has made it so that it is something that I need to do. And I'm doing this informally with no intro, no nothing, because I feel like I need to set the table. Because this show has been many things. There was a time when I was upset that people would make fun of Christianity. Like, I got into some of my friends' faces on the very show, on this show, on Irreverent, a different incarnation. So we've come a long way from there. I'm a former evangelical, and I feel like it's a good idea to just start it with how this whole thing came about. But before that, the reason that I started it today, and I wanted it today, and I wanted it fresh, is because I told my mom that I don't believe in God today. And mostly, I didn't think much about it because I figured she would know by now. I guess just because I didn't say it outright, that I don't believe in God, she was still holding on for hope, and that's totally cool. Like, I love my mom. She is a great mom. She is a deeply religious woman from the old country, from the Dominican Republic. You know, with that comes a lot of, like, conservatism and things like that. And I know that when you look at me, you don't really think, there's that conservative guy I know. But there was a time when I was a conservative. Now, I figured that this would be as good a time as any to discuss what this new resurrection of Irreverent is going to look like. The born again, or born again. It's been like 4 times. Because we started as a bad Christian. In the Christian podcast world, there is the Bad Christian podcast. And if you are familiar with the Bad Christian podcast, they are from the band Emery. They are the Christian podcast that says fuck, you know, that they're okay with dropping some F-bombs, and that's fine. We did that. We started like a worst Christian podcast, and this was before they started, so, you know, not for nothing, but, you know, we started before them. I did not know of any other podcast other than Irreverent that would tackle the topics that we tackled. And the thing is, here's the thing. We were definitely the worst Christian version because we cursed and we brought non-Christians in, and even the Christians that we would bring in were hardcore lefties and feminists, and I was the conservative of the group. Believe it or not, I was the conservative. The concept for the show was something that I always wanted to do, and my buddy, shout out Anthony Bouye, wanted to do a show, and it was a little bit different than mine. Mine was more edgy, I guess. I hate using that word, but for lack of a better term, edgy, let's call it. So it started off as just an audio podcast, and my friend Clint was actually the one that named the show Irreverent. And it's because, you know, we were being pretty irreverent. So off to the Discovery Church offices we went. I found out later that my business partner, those were his offices when we were recording, and this is before he and I knew each other. It was a pretty big church, but long story short, his parents co-founded the church that we started in. At Discovery Church, we had a few different hosts, including Richie and Bouye, and Al would come out sometimes, but Al came back a few times for Irreverent. He's been a frequent co-host, so that was really cool. But after that, we went to Cup of Soul. And Cup of Soul was awesome, but after that, I think we stopped because I got a job doing radio during the Shannon Burke Show was the show that I was doing. And so because of that, I had to stop doing the show, and it was really time consuming. So, you know, I wound up putting it on hold for a couple of years, and by that point, Bouye had moved on to, different passions and stuff like that. So I restarted it briefly a couple more times before bringing it back in 2014. Now remember, this started in 2008. So it's just, it's a project that I just keep bringing back because I don't know when to fucking stop, apparently. That lasted a couple years. I brought it back with a pastor from a pretty major church around here. And it lasted a couple of years until this pastor basically said that he was questioning his faith to the point that he thought that he was basically what was being preached at the church was bullshit. And he was still at the church, and that was his livelihood and stuff like that. I don't know if it still is. We don't talk anymore. But he called me and he said he wanted me to erase all of the shows that we'd been doing for so long because he was freaking out that he was going to get figured out. He figured that somebody was going to listen to the show. And that was going to be that for him and his career. I said, look, man, I understand, but that's insane. I'm not taking down whatever it was, 2, 3, 4 years of podcasting. I could help out. Let's figure out how to do that. And I even said, look, if you pay me a little bit of money, I can go ahead and go through and take out anything that might identify you. All that happened, and eventually I took down the show anyway, a couple of years later. Long story short, I didn't do it, and I haven't heard from him since then. I don't know if he blocked me or whatever. That's, that's neither here nor there. All that to say, I have no ill will towards the man. He's, cool. Hope everything goes well, etc., etc. I do have to say, though, I know that it's his livelihood, and I get it. And ultimately, Irreverent has never been a huge podcast, but it reached enough people that at one point we had a feud with the Westboro Baptist Church. So, it was big enough that Megan Phelps and I had a back and forth back in the day. Anyway, so what's different now? Well, what is different now? So much is different now. Well, for one, I'm not sure I believe in God. And it depends on the day you catch me. Some days I'll say, I don't know. I have no idea. So I am agnostic. But I lean toward atheist. And certainly, and certainly, do I believe that the Abrahamic God is the one true God? No. If I do believe, there are a couple of steps before I believe that the Abrahamic God is. Do I believe that there is a God at all? And to that I say, maybe. Do I believe that there is an Abrahamic God that wants to basically strike me dead because I don't believe in a book that they say is infallible that was written in the Bronze Ages that includes, but isn't limited to, a 7-day earth? I know that there are people that believe that that was a poem. That was one of the arguments I used to make. There was a lot of arguments that I had made, and honestly, it's not. I used to be angry about it. I used to be angry and about all of that, but now I'm not. Now I'm just like. I understand it. And part of the conversation that I had with my mom about this, when I told her that I didn't believe in God, and it definitely broke her heart, which is kind of, I don't want to do that to my mom. I don't. But at the same time, I want to be truthful. With my words. If nothing else, do not lie, or don't, thou shalt not lie. I think that's one of the. It's been a long time since I read the commandments. But anyway, for one, like I said, I'm not sure I believe in God. The other thing is, Irreverent will now live on its own channel on the Play Button app, and on the books, and on the Purple Gaming app. Also, the app that sounds like a clock. So all of those mediums. And then 3. I'll be monologuing like this, obviously, and I'll be bringing in guests and generally chatting about Christianity primarily, but mostly in the context of current events. So my other show, The Hijack, will also live on its own channel, and it's, Irreverent The End and The Hijack The End, and they're both on YouTube, so youtube.com/@, I think, now. So it's youtube.com/@The Hijack The End and youtube.com/Irreverent The End. My DJ Zouain channel will still be music and music-related content, including gig logs and mixes and stuff like that. So do me a solid and follow all of that. Now that that is out of the way, something that I experienced recently is, I guess, the opposite of what I went through. Somebody with whom I have a parasocial relationship just professed their faith to Jesus Christ, and specifically Catholicism. Now, I say it specifically because I'm a fan, and he is very open about his faith. And I've seen many people, many artists, musicians mainly, and Latin musicians. A lot of Latin musicians become Christians for some reason, which, whatever. That's cool. One of the guys that, and I'm not going to name him because I don't want to name drop. I don't want to make it like a clickbaity thing. I've interviewed him in the past, so if you know, you know. And I asked him if he wanted to come back on because when we talked, he was a leftist, like a full-blown leftist atheist. Now he is he hasn't outright said this, but it sounds like he has definitely gone on the conservative route. And he is very down with Catholicism, which, by the way, totally makes sense with, like, you know, his history as far as, like, if he was going to become a Christian, this is how I think that he would have done it, just because of everything else that he's into, which it's one of those situations where I am very conflicted. I'm conflicted because that we had so much in common, both politically and in some ways even religiously, or lack thereof. I've been deconstructing since 2014. I was a diehard Christian. 2014 hit, 2016 happened. You know who got elected. And then I was like, wait a minute. 82% of white evangelicals and 67% of black evangelicals voted for this guy in 2016. And this is a thrice divorced fornicator who cheated on his first wife with his second wife with his third wife with a porn star, and gave her the loudest hush money you've ever seen. I went to Halloween this year, came back dressed as Jesus for Halloween in downtown Sanford. And as I was dressed as Jesus, apparently I got there about 10 minutes too late because there was a group of Bible thumpers playing music and basically disturbing the nightlife, right? I was walking into West End, and these two kids, they were probably in their early 20s, maybe a little bit younger even. They stopped me and they're like, "Hey, do you think it's cool to dress like Jesus?" And I was like, "Yeah. What do you think? Like, why do you think it's cool to dress like Jesus?" So we sat down and we started talking. I was like, "If you want to chat, we can chat, man. But I've been where you are, and I've done all of the apologetics that you're going to tell me, and I've done all of the arguing but you know what? I'll sit down because you guys are nice, and I'm trying to be nice, and I'm trying to be less angry about religion. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to be less angry and less like, it's not those kids' fault, and I was there. I was that guy. So I'm trying to turn a new leaf as far as how I talk to Christians until we get to politics and they try to justify whatever it is. I'm going to treat them the way they treated gay guys in the 90s. In the 90s, you know, they treated gay people in the 90s like, just don't say it around me. Don't ask, don't tell. Don't ask, don't tell. Okay? I don't want to. I could. You know what? You don't have to tell me. I can smell it on you. I know that I know. See, that's what I'm trying to stop. The point is, if you are the type that makes who you voted for your whole identity, I don't want to talk to you. So that's it. Like there's just certain things. And if you have a problem with it, let me know. Let me know in the comments or wherever. When people find religion, I remember that joy. You know? I remember that. I remember the dopamine hit. You know, that came with being in a community and talking about these things and figuring out this puzzle from this book that was written in the Bronze Ages and trying to figure out the way that this particular book is flawless or is infallible. I'm sorry. I can't. I don't know how that is possible. And yes, with faith, blah, 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 blah. I get it. And that's fine. You can have all of the faith you want. You can believe in whatever you want. My only problem, the only time I have a problem, is when these things bleed into my life. When Roe v. Wade specifically, I have never voted harder against someone than I did this election because of the crisis that awaits us. And I'm going to beat you to the punch. We have a great economy coming up. A lot of it because of what Biden, who I am not a fan of. And I am not a fan of Harris either. But because of a lot of the implementations that they made during their time in office, we're going to see a thriving economy coming up, which is going to give Fanta-fascist license. Be like, see, because people don't know that it takes time for these things to happen. There's an anticipation of a great economy coming up. I hope they're right. I don't see it, because tariffs are passed down to the consumer, and tariffs is the Fanta-fascist's favorite word. We're going to see what happens with that. I don't think we've seen the people around, the people that are alive today and cognizant, and they haven't really seen a fascism. They're about to see a fascism, a real fascism. And just to be clear, our government in the entire world stage, even the Democrats, are center right. The Democrats are center right, which means that in no uncertain terms, the right wing is basically fascist. If you ask anybody in Europe what they believe our government is, that is what it is. And it would not have gotten that way had it not been for the evangelical right. The power of the evangelical right wasn't really concentrated until the fight for Roe v. Wade. So right before Reagan, I believe. When the first fight for Roe v. Wade was happening, they took the Catholics and the evangelicals and put them together. They merged them into back then, before all of that happened, the evangelicals thought the Catholics were a cult. They called it the cult of the cookie. Because and now evangelicals do that shit too. What is going on? Maybe because it's all made up. So the Catholics and the evangelicals get together. They vote in a Republican. They vote in Ronald Reagan. That's how we ended up in the shit show we did. Ronald Reagan and Reaganomics and trickle down economics and all that shit. That's how that all started. And it started because one political strategist thought, what if we made a big deal out of abortions? Look it up. Look up the history of Roe v. Wade. And one of my favorite arguments to use when I was a conservative, this is me pleading to the Democrat to vote Republican.
Look, man, just vote Republican. The economy's going to be better, and there's no way we're going to be overturning Roe v. Wade. There's no way we're going to do that.
That's how it happened. You just get people to believe, they would never do that. And what happened today? Today, people are like, oh, no, that would never happen. Look at what happened. I actually said back in the day,
dude, you would need to have a majority conservative justices in there, and that would not happen. That's not going to happen. We would never be able to do that.
Look at what happened. So that's where we are today. I decided to bring back Irreverent because anytime there is a Republican in office, you can blame the evangelicals. I said it. And it's the truth. At the end of the day, if the evangelicals didn't vote the way that they did in the droves that they did it in, because apparently they forgot the parable, or they forgot the story about Moses and the idols, the golden calf. I guess they have an orange calf right now, not a golden one, but whatever. At the end of the day, if it wasn't for evangelicals, we wouldn't be in the predicament that we are in. And it has nothing to do with the betterment of evangelicals, because remember, most of these people voted against their own interests. 82% of evangelicals, white evangelicals, 67% of black evangelicals voted against their interests. And it was all because of propaganda. It was all that's all it was. Propaganda and years of conditioning. Man, I wish that I could talk to, what was it, 20-year-old me. Man, I was a true believer. Man. That shit. Oof. Anyway. So yeah. It doesn't bode well for us in the next few years. And as far as a celebrity that I follow, that I admire, that I think is really, really cool, it kind of sucks to see that, but it's also cool to see how happy he is. And that's really dope. And I can't knock that. It's hard for me to knock that. And even if I want to be just like, I can't believe it. This, blah, blah, blah. It's, you know what, man? But the thing is, and then there's also the element of, this person was a champion for the left, somebody who really and felt bad, and like I did, I ran into a bunch of Christians that I was just like, oh God, you people suck. He did that, but with the left, because guess what? There are people on both sides of the aisle that absolutely suck, that take it too far. Arguably, I was probably one of those people on more than one occasion. Some would argue right now. All that to say, Irreverent's back, and if you become an evangelical, if you decide to believe in God, if you find religion, cool, that's fine. Don't make your religion my problem. That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at with it. That's where I've been with it. That's where I've been with it for many years now, thankfully. But this podcast started with me being a diehard evangelical Christian conservative in a very liberal church. And I would argue that had I not had that church and a couple of other churches like Collective in DeLand, I would not have made the leap to where I am today, which is, I try to be empathetic. I try to do things that aren't, I try not to do things for selfish reasons, if that makes any sense. Or you try not to. But also, I'm going to fight fiercely for people, for the least of these, like the Palestinian Jew that these evangelicals pretend to follow, like to do, And I'm going to close it out with this. There's also this resurgence of Christian punk bands that are aligning themselves with conservatives, even after Trump came into the picture politically. Like, there's also guys that are former addicts that use Christianity as like their new drug, their new addiction. And that's, like I said, whatever floats your boat, bro. That's totally fine. But I just saw Officer Negative, which is an old school hardcore punk band that I grew up listening to, doing a show called JCHC Fest, Jesus Christ Hardcore Fest. And they brought in a dude by the name of Richie the Barber, who was this comedian guy who's tattooed like a barber, or tattooed like a clown. And he's a barber. He's a barber in LA. He's He's cut Steve-O's hair. At the end of the day, like this guy found Jesus after being sober or whatever. I don't know his story really, but now the guy is like, with the flipped hat that says Jesus on it, and like just all kinds of stuff. And then what really, and this is my problem. My problem is not with that. My problem is that the first picture I saw with Officer Negative was one of the members with a MAGA hat, like a black MAGA hat, because black is hardcore. Black on black. So like seeing Officer Negative embrace MAGA, to me was just like, what the hell is going on? Like what is the deal here? What is happening? So that is why I am doing Irreverent again. So follow Irreverent The End on YouTube, on Twitch, and on Facebook. That's what I meant. Oh, and TikTok. I'm also on. I also put it on the TikToks. It's all Irreverent The End. When we do it live, you can be part of the discussion if you feel like it. Thanks for checking out the practice broadcast. Hopefully it sounded fine. Hopefully it sounded good. I'm going to be doing these probably monthly. I'm going to say probably monthly. And the hijack will probably also be monthly. We'll add music and all of that in post. And we'll also... We might actually... You know what? I might just do the show dry. Just raw dog the show. That sounded weird. Just do the show live. I think that's how we're going to do it. But thank you so much for hanging out. Follow me on all social media. Linktree and all of that. You could find it everywhere. Thanks for hanging out. Peace.
All right, I'll say it again. Now can I go home to my toys?